Wyoming Territory, August 1883. The sun was setting blood orange over the dry hills when he found her. Isaiah Reddick reined in his gelding just outside of Powder River, the dusty trail ahead of him stained with something darker than earth. He narrowed his eyes, slid down from the saddle, and walked forward, boots crunching gravel, until he saw her. A woman, barefoot, torn dress soaked in sweat and birth. Her legs were pulled up, arms wrapped around a tiny crying baby swaddled in nothing but her shawl. She was lying in the middle of the road. Isaiah dropped to his knees. "Miss," he said low, careful. "Can you hear me?" Her head turned. Eyes the color of storm clouds met his, hazy with pain but alive. The baby wailed louder. Isaiah's breath caught. She was young, maybe his age, maybe a little less, and her lips were cracked, her hair tangled with dust and blood. But she was holding that child like a soldier protects a flag. "I'm not gonna hurt you," Isaiah said. "You need help." Her voice was no more than a rasp. "They left me. Said I was a curse, said I wasn't worth saving." Isaiah glanced around. There was no wagon, no supplies, no man in sight. "You gave birth here?" he asked. "I did," she whispered. "Alone." Something sharp twisted in his chest. He looked down at the baby, whose tiny fists beat against the air like it was too much. Isaiah reached down, slow. "I'm carrying you now, both of you." She shook her head, weak. "You don't even know my name." He bent, sliding one arm beneath her knees and the other around her shoulders. She was light, too light. "You're mine now," he said simply. "That's all I need to know." He whistled for the horse and lifted her gently, settling her across the saddle in front of him. She leaned against his chest, too tired to protest. The baby stayed cradled in her arms, pressed between them. "What's your name?" he asked after a minute, voice quiet against the wind. "Rowena," she said. "Rowena Whitlow." Isaiah nodded. "Isaiah Reddick." The ride was slow. He kept one arm around her, steadying her every time the horse shifted. She did not speak again, not until his cabin came into view near the bend of the creek, its small chimney trailing smoke into the dusk sky. "You live alone?" she asked, barely audible. "I do." "You always go riding out this far?" "I do not," he said. "But something pulled me today." He dismounted in front of the cabin and carried her inside. The room was warm, fire already lit from before he left. He laid her gently on the bed, then took the baby from her arms. "You got a name for him?" he asked. "It's a girl," Rowena murmured. "Her name is Kaia." Isaiah smiled a little. "Hello, Kaia." He wrapped the baby in a soft quilt and laid her in a wooden crate lined with sheepskin. Then he turned back to Rowena, who was watching him with something between fear and disbelief. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Isaiah poured water from a pitcher and held it to her lips. "Because no one else did." She drank, eyes never leaving his face. "I'll get you cleaned up," he said. "Then food. You need rest." Rowena nodded once, then her eyes fluttered shut. Isaiah moved quiet as a whisper, heating water and gently washing the blood and dust from her legs, arms, and face. She did not wake. He worked slow, careful not to disturb her. When she was clean and dry, he pulled the covers up over her and sat beside the fire. Kaia slept in her box, wrapped warm. Isaiah leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring into the flames. He did not know who had left this woman to die. Did not know what kind of people could abandon someone in labor, out in the open, like she was worth less than a dying horse. But he knew this. He had her now, and he was not letting go. When Rowena opened her eyes again, morning light filled the cabin. She blinked, confused, then sat up fast, wincing. Kaia, Isaiah was already there, holding the baby in his arms, bouncing her gently. "She's fine," he said. "Hungry, though?" Rowena stared at him. "You stayed." Isaiah met her eyes. "I told you, you're mine now." Tears welled up in her eyes, then spilled down her cheeks. Not from pain, not from fear. Relief, she held out her arms for the baby and he handed Kaia over with care. Rowena settled back against the pillows, feeding her daughter with a soft hum in her throat. Isaiah stood by the bed, watching. "You said they left you," he said. "Who?" Rowena swallowed. "My father and brothers. We were passing through on our way to Oregon. They did not want to bring a ruined daughter west. Said I'd slow them down. Said I brought shame." Isaiah's jaw clenched. "The father, gone before I ever told him," she said. "He was a ranch hand back near Cheyenne. I thought he loved me." Isaiah breathed out slow, then sat down beside the bed. "Well," he said, "they were wrong. You are not ruined." She looked at him then, really looked. "Why do you care?" He did not answer right away. Just leaned forward, resting his hand gently on her arm. "Because I know what it is to be left behind." Rowena blinked. "You," Isaiah nodded, "orphaned at 9, grew up working cattle, got my own place now, no family to speak of." She looked down at Kaia. "I guess we have that in common," she whispered. Isaiah touched her hand, thumb brushing over her fingers. "Not anymore." She met his eyes. And for the first time she did not look afraid. Outside, the wind stirred the grass. Inside, the silence settled between them, not heavy but steady, like the beginning of something strong. Isaiah did not say the words again. He did not need to. Rowena already knew. The morning sun had risen past the window pane by the time Rowena shifted the quilt aside and eased her feet to the floor. Her legs trembled under her, but they held. Kaia lay nestled in the crate beside the hearth, bundled snug and sleeping with her mouth open, one tiny hand splayed across her cheek. Isaiah stood near the table, sleeves rolled, whittling a length of pine into kindling. His shirt was tucked, boots dusted clean, and his eyes flicked toward her the moment she moved. "You shouldn't be up yet," he said, setting the knife down. "You've hardly had a night's rest." "I need to stand," she murmured, steadying herself with the edge of the bed frame. "I've laid still too long." He didn't argue, just crossed the room and offered his arm. She took it, fingers curling around the inner bend of his elbow. Together they walked the few paces to the bench near the window. She sat slow, jaw set against a flicker of pain. "You've got a spring near the trees?" she asked, gaze settling on the cottonwoods outside. "Runs clean all year. I carry water up every morning." She nodded, pressing a hand to her side. "How far's the next homestead?" He took a breath before answering. "Nearest folk are the Larson family, east about 5 miles. Then the post office mule comes through every second week." Rowena looked down at her hands. One thumb rubbed over the callus near her knuckle. "I don't have people to write to." "You don't need any," he said, voice even. "You have me." She looked at him then, brow furrowed, uncertain. "I don't know what you expect from me." Isaiah leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. "I expect nothing you don't offer." The words sat heavy between them. A sparrow chirped outside the window ledge and the fire popped softly behind them. After a long pause, Rowena spoke. "I can sew," she said. "And I've mended tack before if it's not too torn. I can cook too if there's flour and lard enough." "You're not here to earn your place," he said. "But I won't stop you from helping." "I need to be useful," she said, more to herself than him. He gave a single nod. "Then I'll show you where things are." They spent the next hour moving quiet through the cabin. Isaiah pointed to the cupboard where dried beans and cornmeal sat in jars, to the shelf of tools hung neat above the work table, to the bolt of muslin stored beside a worn Bible. Rowena listened, hands clasped behind her back, eyes sharp as she took it in. When Kaia began to stir, Isaiah stepped over and lifted her with the ease of someone who'd done it before, though Rowena knew he hadn't. He handed the child to her mother without a word, then fetched a tin pail and stepped outside. Rowena settled in the rocking chair, nursing Kaia as the wind brushed through the open window. The baby's suckling eased something tight in her chest. She traced the line of Kaia's ear with the tip of her finger, the shape so small and perfect it made her throat ache. She didn't hear Isaiah return until he knelt beside the hearth and poured water into the pot. Steam rose as he stoked the fire higher, and the smell of heat on copper filled the room. "You've done this alone a long time," he said without looking up. "But you're not alone now." She didn't answer. The words stirred something deep, something half buried beneath weeks of fear and shame and silence. Isaiah stood and turned toward her, wiping his hands on a cloth. "When you're ready, there's a garden needs tending. I've let the squash run wild. I'll see to it," she said, shifting Kaia to her shoulder. "I've a good hand with beans. I figured you might." That night she lay in the bed again, Kaia curled against her side. The lantern had been turned down low, and she could hear Isaiah moving about, quietly folding his coat to sleep on the floor by the fire. "You don't have to sleep there," she said into the dark. He paused. "It's your space now." "I won't overstep it." She was quiet a long moment, then asked, "Is that how you are with everyone?" "I haven't had a reason to be any different," he said. She turned her face toward the shadows. "You don't know what I've done. I know what you've endured." "That's not the same." "No," he said. "But it's what matters." The wind whispered against the shutters. Kaia sighed in her sleep, and Rowena reached down to pull the quilt higher. "I don't know how to trust it," she whispered. "Kindness that doesn't want something back." "You'll learn," he said. She closed her eyes then. And for the first time in many nights, she slept without fear. The soil was stubborn, dry beneath the surface, but Rowena's hands didn't falter. She worked with quiet focus, coaxing it open row by row with the small hoe Isaiah had fetched from the shed. Her skirts were tucked and pinned above her ankles, the morning sun warm across her shoulders. Behind her, Kaia slept in a woven cradle Isaiah had carved from willow and lined with old linens. He'd set it beneath the cottonwood, where breeze and birdsong kept the child at ease. Isaiah stood a few paces off, sharpening a scythe against a whetstone. The steady rasp of metal on stone broke now and then when he glanced her way, but he didn't speak. He didn't need to. The rhythm of the day had settled between them, her hands in the earth, his shaping wood and iron, the baby breathing softly in the shade. Rowena looked up once, brushing a curl from her cheek with the back of her wrist. "Do you keep bees?" Isaiah paused his work. "Used to. Lost the hives after a hard freeze last spring. Haven't rebuilt." "I could help," she said. "If you show me what's needed." He nodded once. "I'd like that." She turned back to the soil, planting beans in neat rows knuckle deep. The scent of cut grass rose in the air as Isaiah turned back to his scythe. When the sun reached its peak, she stood slowly and walked to the shade. Isaiah brought a basin and a cloth, and she wiped her hands clean before lifting Kaia into her arms. While she fed the child, Isaiah leaned against the porch post, arms folded. "You ever think of leaving Wyoming?" Rowena didn't look up. "I used to, when I thought somewhere else meant better. And now," she ran her fingertip down Kaia's spine, "now I think peace isn't found by running. It's built, quietly." Isaiah's mouth pulled slightly at one corner, not in amusement, but something steadier. "I've never known what peace looked like." Rowena drew the cloth over Kaia's shoulder, patting gently. "Maybe it looks like a man who carries a stranger from the dust and doesn't ask what she's worth." Isaiah didn't answer. She met his eyes, and whatever passed between them didn't need naming. That evening she stood at the stove, stirring cornmeal into hot water. Isaiah sat near the fire, repairing a broken harness strap. The scent of sage drifted in through the open door, carried on the wind. "Will you tell me about your mother?" she asked, voice low. Isaiah didn't look up, but his stitching slowed. "She died birthing my sister. Same week the fever took my father." I'm sorry, he nodded once. I don't remember her face, just her voice, singing while she shelled peas. Rowena watched him. You keep that memory close, it's all I have of her. The silence that followed was soft, not hollow. She served the mush into 2 tin bowls and they ate with quiet spoons as dusk settled. Afterward, she stepped outside with Kaia in her arms. The stars were just beginning to show. Isaiah joined her, holding a blanket which he draped over her shoulders without a word. His hand lingered at her back, warm through the fabric. You could have let me die, she said. I couldn't have, he said simply. Not and lived with myself. She leaned slightly into him, not much, just enough to feel it, honest and unspoken. I didn't believe a man like you existed, she said. I wasn't sure I did either, he replied. Kaia shifted in her arms, settling deeper into sleep. The night was cool, but the air was still. She looked up at him, face lit by starlight, and something in her chest gave way, not broken, but opened. I want to stay, she said. Isaiah didn't move. Then stay. I mean it. I know you do. She turned toward him fully, lifting her hand to his chest, palm flat over his heart. He covered it with his own, fingers rough from rope and blade. You're not just safe here, he said. You're wanted. Her breath caught, but she didn't look away. And you? I've been waiting for something real my whole life, he said. Didn't expect it to come like this, but I know it when I see it. Kaia's breathing was soft and even. The world around them quieted. Rowena tipped her forehead to his shoulder. Then let's build something honest, Isaiah. He kissed her hair, slow and steady. We already are. The first frost came early that year, painting the edges of the pasture grass silver just after dawn. Rowena stood at the fence line with Kaia bundled in a shawl across her chest, watching as Isaiah moved through the pen with the young steer he'd been breaking for harness. His coat was dusted with hay, the back of his neck damp from the morning's labor. She leaned her weight on the post, shoulders stiff from the chill, and tucked Kaia's feet deeper beneath the wool. She's growing long through the legs, Isaiah said without turning around. Rowena smiled, brushing her cheek against Kaia's crown. She'll be tall. She'll be strong. They stood that way a moment longer before Isaiah crossed to the gate, unlatched it, and came to stand beside her. He didn't reach for Kaia, just looked down at her, then at Rowena, quiet in the way he always was when he was thinking through something deeper than words. There's a trading post at the junction south of town, he said. Owners looking to hire someone steady for bookkeeping and dry goods. Said he'd take a woman if she knew her numbers. Rowena blinked. You spoke to him last week, when I went for salt and molasses. He rested one hand against the fence rail, didn't tell him anything certain. Just asked what he needed. I haven't worked outside a home before. You reckon you'd want to try? She looked out at the hills, their curves dusted in the brittle gold of late October. I'd want to know I could make my own way if I had to. Isaiah nodded once, not quick. I'll ride with you if you decide to go. I wouldn't leave Kaia. I wouldn't expect you to. Rowena shifted her weight, adjusting the sling. It's strange, Isaiah, how quiet things are now, not like before. I keep waiting for something to break. He looked at her then, eyes steady. Things don't always break. Sometimes they mend. My hands still shake in the night, she said. Not from cold, I know. You don't ask about what it was like back there. I figured if you ever wanted to speak it, you would. She turned toward him fully. They didn't look back, not once. I watched the wagon disappear. I bled through my dress and they said it was God's judgment. Isaiah didn't flinch. He reached out and placed his calloused hand over hers where it gripped the fence. God doesn't speak through cowards. She swallowed hard, her throat tightening. I used to pray for them to turn around, just once. Isaiah's voice was low. You don't have to pray for them now, just for yourself. And her. Kaia stirred, her small mouth twitching into a flutter of sleep. The wind lifted Rowena's shawl, and Isaiah eased it back down over the child's head with a gentleness that made her chest ache. "I want to build something that lasts," she said. "You already are," he said. "Every time you wake up and put your feet on the floor." She looked up at him, and this time she didn't look away. "I'd like to take your name." Isaiah's brow lifted slightly. "You sure? I don't want to carry theirs anymore." He studied her face like it was a map he'd been following since the first day he found her. "Then when the ground thaws," he said, "we'll stand before a preacher." Rowena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Would you want that?" "I've wanted that since the moment you opened your eyes and didn't ask me to leave." She reached for his hand and laid it against Kaia's back. "Then you're hers too." Isaiah nodded, voice rough. "I already was." They stood together until the sun climbed higher, melting the frost from the fence rails. Behind them, smoke curled from the chimney, and the scent of warmed apples drifted through the yard from the pot she'd left simmering. Rowena pressed her cheek against Kaia's head and whispered, "She'll never wonder if she's wanted." Isaiah wrapped his arm around them both, holding tight. "She'll never have to." The preacher came up from Arvada in a wagon with a cracked wheel and a wife who carried a basket of eggs as a gift. They arrived on the first warm day of March, when the snow had drawn back from the hills, and the creek behind Isaiah's cabin ran fast with meltwater. Rowena had pressed her only good dress the night before, smoothing it flat with the heel of her hand and laying it over the back of a chair by the hearth. She wore it now, sleeves mended neat, collar pinned with a brooch Isaiah had carved from antler and polished until it shone like ivory. Her hair was tied low, the way she liked it, with Kaia asleep in the arms of the preacher's wife, who cooed to the baby in a voice like wind through wheat. Isaiah stood beside her, in the coat he'd worn when they met, now brushed and stitched clean. He held her hand, thumb resting in the hollow between her knuckles. The vows were spoken beneath the cottonwood tree, its branches bare above them but just beginning to bud. No crowd, no music, only the preacher's voice and the hush of the field around them. When it was done, Isaiah kissed her without hesitation, one hand at her jaw, the other still holding hers. "I'll never leave your side," he said quiet when their foreheads touched. "You never have," she whispered. They signed the registry with ink the preacher brought, and afterward, Rowena served stew she'd made with the last of the dried venison, bread warm from the coals, and a pie she'd managed with winter apples. Isaiah poured coffee, and the preacher's wife laid Kaia in her cradle, smiling as the child curled into the muslin. When dusk settled, the visitors rode back toward town, promising to return come summer if the wheel held. Rowena and Isaiah stood at the gate, watching their wagon disappear into the folds of the hills until the sound of hooves faded into quiet. Back inside, Rowena lit the lamp and turned to Isaiah. "I never thought I'd wear a ring," she said, turning her hand to study the band he'd made from silver wire and a chip of turquoise. "I never thought I'd give one," he answered, reaching to cup her cheek. "But I meant every word. You're my home now." She leaned into his touch. "I used to think love was something you had to beg for, something earned with silence." "You'll never beg in this house," he said. "You'll never be quiet to be safe." Kaia stirred then, and Rowena lifted her from the cradle. Isaiah took the blanket from the chair and wrapped it around them both, then leaned down and pressed a kiss to the baby's brow. "She'll grow up knowing what steady looks like," Rowena said. "She already does," Isaiah replied. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm neither of them had ever had before, a rhythm not ruled by fear or loneliness. Rowena took the ledger job at the trading post 3 days a week. Isaiah hitched the wagon and drove her early, Kaia bundled in a basket between them, sleeping through the ride. While Rowena worked, Isaiah repaired tools and harnesses for nearby ranchers, bringing Kaia along in a sling he wore under his coat. In the evenings, they sat by the fire while Rowena read aloud from the old Bible or copied stories into the blank journal. Isaiah had surprised her with stories she made up for Kaia, full of birds that spoke and trees that danced in the wind. Sometimes Isaiah would whittle while she read, carving toys and small animals for the child, each one more intricate than the last. They planted the garden again come April, with beans, squash, and a patch of sweet peas near the porch. Rowena took to humming when she worked, and Isaiah, though he never said so, began pausing in his chores just to listen. One night, as they sat on the porch watching the last light fade behind the hills, Rowena said, "You think it'll last?" Isaiah turned toward her slowly. "It already has." "And it will." She leaned her head on his shoulder, Kaia asleep in her arms. "I didn't think people like us got this." "We do," he said. "We just had to wait long enough to find it." Their fingers threaded together. No need for more words. That summer, the squash came in thick, and Kaia learned to sit up in the grass, laughing at the chickens. Isaiah built a second room onto the cabin by hand, and Rowena filled it with shelves for books and a rocking chair she'd traded for at the post. They hosted the Larsons for supper in July, and Rowena served biscuits that didn't burn for the first time. By autumn, Kaia spoke her first word, "Mama," and Isaiah carved it into a small plaque for the wall. Underneath, he etched the date and a rough outline of a cottonwood leaf. Rowena stood beside him when he hung it, her arm around his waist. "We're not what we were," she said. "No," he agreed. "We're better." And they were, in every small way that mattered. In the way she laid her hand on his back as he worked, in the way he reached for her first when she laughed. In the way they built together a life that had once seemed impossible. They did not speak of the past anymore. It had shaped them, but it did not own them. What they had now was built on something harder, something earned. It was not loud or grand, but it was whole, and it was theirs, forever.